Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch for Comic Skit Counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue 114, our third Bat March episode, and this one is Batman by the Fans. We asked you to submit your voice clips, and we asked you to email us at capesonthecouch@gmail.com, and several of our fans did, as well as several of our fellow podcasters. And this is going to be kind of like a shorter, simpler episode. It's basically going to be just us talking about Batman and having fun and just sort of shooting the breeze and getting some interesting different feedback. So you'll be hearing from folks that are not me and Doc Issues for a change. Although last week we had Dr. Langley and Ben Stover, which was just, again, so awesome. And I was just so stoked. And at the end of it, even after we went off air, he was like, yeah, let's do this again. And I was like,
Yep.
Especially when he said that he turns down most interview requests these days. He's like, yeah, they tend to ask the same stuff over and over again. But I bet he's never been asked before, do you think Superman is Bruce Wayne and Batman is Clark Kent?
That certainly was the most unique question I can recall.
So, by the way, because I don't want to totally throw Ruby under the bus, she did post the Tumblr source for that conspiracy theory. And it was basically that because something having to do with the fact that that Superman is like investigating things and Bruce Wayne, we know, is the detective. Like it played off of that. And there was just some stuff. It was one of those weird Tumblr headcanon type things.
Okay.
That's why I don't have a Tumblr account, because I would just end up getting in arguments with people going, you know, you're wrong, right?
Mm.
You know, that doesn't make any logical sense. No, my headcanon said, yeah, that's nice. Sorry, Doc and I are in a real punchy mood. It's been a long week for both of us.
Absolutely.
And I said to him before we started recording tonight, I was like, thank God this is just us playing clips and reacting, because neither of us have 3 neurons to rub together to do anything beyond that.
Ooh. Yeah, that's an understatement.
So, and we are recording this, by the way, on the 3rd anniversary. I know we talked that March is our 3rd anniversary as a podcast. Well, as of our recording date, March 7th is the day that our first episode drops. So happy birthday to us. So without any further ado, let's get this underway. And so the first clip is from our friend, supporter, and present level patron, Jeanine, who sent us this clip.
I'm asked to talk about a memory of Batman. And I think I'm old, right? So I grew up in the 70s when there was no cable. We had like UHF and VHF and bunny ear antennas. And what we watched was the old 60s campy Batman show. And I loved the Technicolor biff, bam, pow. That is my earliest memory of Batman. And I know it's cheesy, but I mean, they had Cesar Romero, right? So it couldn't have been that bad. And then my more grown up memory of Batman. Look, Batman Returns, Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. She gave me feelings. And I think that goes for a lot of us. So those are my 2 most memorable things about Batman. Like Technicolor, campy, silly, and then Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman.
Well, and I recall last week we had the discussion at the start with Ben and Dr. Langley, and he spoke about his memory of the Batman 66 show. And I know that I also said that I watched a lot of that. Not like Doc. I didn't think it was like the current show.
I was a dumb kid. What do you want me to say?
No, listen, I thought it was a very cute story. But like my dad was the one who sort of introduced it to me. And so he was like, oh, yeah, this is Batman from when I was a kid. So like when it was explained to me that I was like, oh, okay, this is an old show. But, and I also explained that the Michael Keaton films, which we'll be doing the commentary on the original 1989 Batman movie next week for our episode. They came out, like I said, Batman came out when I was 7, and then Batman Returns came out, I think I was 10. So I was a little young to feel a certain way about Michelle Pfeiffer. But when I got older and watched the movies, yes. I think any red-blooded person feels a certain way about Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. I mean, the clip just went viral again on Twitter of her whipping off the 4 mannequin heads in one take. That's how good she is. So, I mean, listen, I don't blame you, Jeanine. I don't think anybody else is going to blame you for feeling a certain way about Michelle Pfeiffer in tight latex.
Hey, good for you.
Certainly not these two guys here hosting the show.
So to talk a little bit about the camp a little bit more, yeah, those effects. I always wondered about that because I knew that those things were in comics, and I always wondered why, of all shows to do that. There was plenty of campy shows at the time. I mean, you think of Scooby-Doo, you think of all these other like movies that came out in that era, and that was the only one to use that like effect, like the visual effect, and I never understood why. I always thought that added to it, but I guess they were the only ones that thought it was worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe the Arrowverse should bring that in. Maybe like Legends of Tomorrow should. I mean, if any of the shows in the Arrowverse is going to do it, Legends of Tomorrow, just lean into the camp. Just do it. Yeah. You know, my wife has been binging Arrow and Flash as of late, and she was watching one today where the Flash was fighting somebody, and they were actually playing the Queen Flash Gordon. Flash, and I was like, wow, you're just going for it.
Yeah. And of course, if you're going to mention Cesar Romero, I don't know anybody else that can pull off wearing full face paint with the whole Joker look and keep the mustache.
Yeah. The paint over the mustache is just, I mean, he wasn't willing to shave it like Henry Cavill, and they didn't have the ability to CGI it out and leave you with a funky looking lip. I was going to say, no, by the time this comes out, no, the Snyder Cut isn't coming out until the end of the month.
Yeah, I don't care.
I'm going to watch it.
Why?
Because I hate myself.
Okay, wait. Let me pull back a little bit. I'm not saying that it's something that's not worth my time. I'm saying that the amount of time that I would need to invest in it is definitely spent better elsewhere. So I could make it worth it, but then the opportunity cost is still too great.
Understood. I can appreciate that. So we'll move on to our next one. Ken and Pat from the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour, fellow podcasting friends of ours. Here's what they have to say.
Hey, this is Ken M.
And Padawan J.
from the ODPH podcast, better known as the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour. And we got asked to talk about Batman.
Yeah.
Twist our arms here.
I know.
Pat, so let me kick it off with you. What means the world to you with Batman? How'd you get into that?
Well, so I'll start with how I got into Batman. That one's a little fuzzy just because Batman's been such a part of my life since, really the animated series came around. I remember watching that and getting hooked on that and watching every episode of that when it aired and the reruns and the subsequent series and all that. But I also remember, when I was watching Saturday afternoons Guts on Nickelodeon, do you have it? Somebody told me, or I was flipping channels or something, and I came across TV Land, and at that time they were airing reruns of the Adam West 60s show. So at that point, I had Batman toys and I had figures and all this stuff. So I was like, you know what? Give me Batman, more Batman. I'm all right. I was really confused though because in the cartoon he uses a grappling hook and he goes flying through the sky, and here's Adam West climbing up the side of a building, and I'm go, Dad, why is Batman climbing up the side of the building? He can fly through the sky with his grappling hook.
Yeah, for me, I always grew up watching on reruns the Adam West series like you did too. And then when Batman 89 came out, that just dominated pop culture so much.
Sure.
Like I remember going to the theater with my dad and watching it and going like, oh my God, what is this? My mind was completely blown.
Yeah.
And then comic wise, it took a while for me to get into that. I never really got hooked on him until later on, because for me, he was put on such a pedestal in the comics. It was like nobody could go near him.
Sure.
That even with his insurmountable circumstances as a normal human, he survives Nightfall, which was one of the best Batman stories to read. And then he goes on and on and on, and it just becomes like he can fight Darkseid by himself.
Right.
It's just like such a weird paradox to think of for me.
Yeah.
But I always think about like stories of, like I said, Nightfall. Contagion is one of my favorite ones to go back and read. And obviously, if you listen to the ODPH podcast, you know my love for the Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo run.
So good.
Yeah, which is absolutely freaking amazing. So for me, it's just kind of seeing how one man could really step it up and really become a force of justice in his own right. And just kind of go, how do you go from being a billionaire into just one of the biggest superheroes in the world? And I think just people can gravitate toward him, that just he's a normal man that's just trying to fight good in the world of evil.
Yeah.
It's just an absolute cool thing to see. So definitely super fans here on the ODPH.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah, so we just want to turn it back over to our friends over at Capes on the Couch. Happy 3rd anniversary from all of us here at 607 Podcasts. And here's to many, many more.
Well, thank you, Ken and Pat. Appreciate that. And I'm sure one of these days we'll have a crossover guest appearance of some kind. We'll get them on and shoot the breeze about some stuff. But they talked about the comics, which, I mean, Dr. Langley did, but I think it's not uncommon, especially given the age range that a lot of the fellow podcasters are. They're roughly in our generation-ish. And so there's going to be a lot of the references to the animated series or to the Michael Keaton film. But it's really touching how many people, even the younger folks, no offense, Jeanine, are saying, yeah, I remember watching the Batman 66, the Adam West show as a kid. And I just think it really speaks to the interesting appeal of the character and that show in particular, that it has that impact on people and has such a lasting impact and that staying power, that a show that even at that time was like 25 years old and people were still saying, yeah, let's throw this on TV because it's kitschy fun.
Yeah, but I do think it still sows the seeds of what we see in every other later iteration. And I know it becomes more meme-tastic, but one of the things that was always popular with that show was no matter what the situation, Batman had something in his utility belt to get them out of whatever was happening. But the idea of just no matter what, if you have enough plans, something's going to work out. And this man had dedicated all of his resources to make sure that he could get out of any situation. And then they point out that depending on what you're reading or what you're paying attention to, taking on these demigods like Darkseid and all of that, it's still one man that's looking for every way to make every use of his time. It's incredible. So you end up with epic stuff, but you also have the cheesy things that maybe we got introduced to, but still have that notion. And I like the juxtaposition of the grappling hook view versus, two guys just walking along a rope, that has the camera turned sideways. It's really cool, mainly because they took the time to really talk during those scenes. Those are really my favorite memories of the entire show.
Yeah, and they always had the celebrity cameo sticking their head out the window, talking to them while they were scaling the building. It was just a fun way to fit the cameos in. Oh yeah, they're climbing the building, and look, here's I don't know, Marlo Thomas or somebody, just whomever. That is, oh look, it's Dick Van Dyke sticking his head out the window. I don't remember who was
right.
the cameos, but that was what they did.
Yeah,
it's Mel Torme.
Right, and of course to get back to the comic side, I definitely agree with the idea that Nightfall is an incredible story. That's definitely one of my favorites.
Yes, we talked at length about that when we did our Bane episode. So next is Ryan from NUEXGuy. That's his Twitter handle. I believe he's a podcaster. Full disclosure, I haven't listened to these before I played them. So these reactions that you're getting are off the cuff. And I did that intentionally because I didn't want to think about stuff. So these are hot takes, so to speak.
When I think about Batman, the first thing that comes to my mind is the animated series. I was born in 1988 and I'm currently 33 years old. And so Batman the Animated Series hit absolutely perfect for me. Like, it was right on time. It aged well with me. And so that's my fondest memory, is probably running about a quarter of a mile from the bus stop every day at 4:30. They would drop us off like at 4:27, and I would run that quarter mile all the way to my house because I knew that Batman the Animated Series came on at 4:30. They usually played Superman the Animated Series at 4 and then Batman at 4:30. So I would run home and maybe catch like the credits of Superman, grab my snack, sit down and watch the episode of Batman, and then my mom would make me do my homework before I could watch anything else after it was over. So that's probably my strongest memory. However, I do have a pretty fond memory of like when I think it was my dad and my grandma that showed me the earlier Batman, the Adam West 66 Batman movie. So I don't think I ever saw any of the series, or maybe I saw bits of it, but I do remember watching the movie. And so there's scenes from the movie that definitely stick out in my mind as well. And then, I was in my late teens, early 20s when Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy came out. And so that obviously hit me at about a perfect time as well. So I really grew up in a great era of different Batman things. That's what Batman means to me. It was pretty much my childhood.
Well, Ryan, I think, is, hitting a lot of the things that we were talking about as far as our generation. We were influenced heavily once the 89 film hit and then the animated series. And then from there, it just really snowballed, escalated. The Nolan trilogy, he's I think the first person to bring up the Nolan trilogy, because everybody's been talking about either Keaton, Adam West, or the animated series. But the Nolan trilogy, I think, for a lot of younger fans, is definitely their introduction into that real worldish Batman, that grounded aesthetic, that grounded reality and storytelling, which I thought was fantastic for the first two movies. And then, as we spoke about with Dr. Langley and Ben last week, sort of the bed there in the third one.
Well, I was going to say went sideways. I don't know. It wasn't in my opinion, it wasn't terrible, but the first two were epic.
By the time you saw the third movie, I had already been so sick and tired of Batman.
Wow.
That's why I broke him. I got tired of people talking about how wonderful he is and how amazing he is. So I broke his back on my knee.
Wow. So first person, though, to mention the Superman animated show, which
Yes.
I thought was amazing as well. And I'm not going to bastardize this episode with talking more about Superman, so don't worry, people, although I'm very tempted to. But yeah, that is something that I knew. I knew that this was something more accepted because the Batman animated series was something that, if depending on what my parents were doing, especially my dad, they would actually stop and watch with me. And for the most part, they didn't really care about what I was watching per se, and they would do their own thing. But that was one show they actually would. And we kind of had like random connections sometimes. It was really cool to see. It's interesting. I'll make a difference between like the TV show of the campy Batman versus the movie itself. Because the movie, I felt, took a few interesting ideas and just left them hanging, where there are a few massive potential political commentaries, just some things where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're inserting these things and people are just going to take this at face value.
Yeah, the movie doesn't address the implications of all of a sudden everybody speaking a different language at the end. And I mean, that whole thing was just absolutely bonkers.
Mm-hmm.
And then the troll logic that they use in the beginning to identify something. C. Oh,
C is for Catwoman.
C for Catwoman.
It's all one amazing riddle. Riddle? I'm like, oh my God, this is
Yeah, even
really?
as a
Come on,
kid,
people.
even as a child, I watched the Batman 66 movie and I was like, what's happening? This doesn't make sense.
Someone made a very interesting comic of the scene with, you know what I'm about to say, the bomb.
Oh, yes.
Okay, like just, but imagine it in like gritty noir with Batman narrating it. So, I
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
You remember it. Okay, good.
Of course
Thank
I do.
you. Okay. Oh,
So-
how I wanted to waste those ducks.
Also, I'm just impressed that Ryan's parents let him watch Batman before homework. I wasn't allowed to watch TV before my homework was done, with the exception of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, because that was an educational program. And therefore, it was perfectly acceptable for my mom to say, you can spend half an hour learning geography and singing doo-wop.
Nice.
Yeah. So next is Jay West. And Jay's thoughts on The Dark Knight.
Hey, Jay West here from the We Get Dub podcast, dropping by to show some love to my favorite Cape Crusader, the Batman. I think my earliest exposure to Batman was through the animated series. I don't think I ever missed an episode, and I was very big on collecting all the action figures. I wasn't really too big into the comics because of the dark, gritty tones. I definitely did not understand them as a child, so they were a little too heavy for me, so I skipped a lot of the reading. But later on, I would go to read on, like, a majority of the comics, I would say. I think the best interpretation of Batman is the Arkham video game series, where it dives into the Batman psyche, and we really see what makes him a hero, but more importantly, what makes him human. I would strongly recommend this series to anybody who hasn't checked it out yet. As far as the movies go, I would say the Tim Burton films did an excellent job of capturing what Gotham felt like. Don't get me wrong, the Dark Knight trilogy was great, but it really wasn't my cup of tea. Anyway, that's all I got right now. Thanks for letting me drop in, and I'll catch you guys next time.
I swear we didn't, at least not on my end, unless Anthony says otherwise. I'm loving the idea that we're expanding each time someone is giving us an answer. This is awesome.
I swear to God, I was just, because I didn't want to just do them alphabetically. So I was like, okay, I'll just throw them randomly and da-da-da-da-da and this, that. And so Jay being the first person to bring up the Arkham video games, I myself have not played them. Because when they came out, it was at a point in my life where I really wasn't doing a whole lot of video gaming. With a 2-year-old at home, I'm really not doing a whole lot of video gaming, but I do try and squeeze in a little bit of time here and there for it. They're an older series, so I should go back and play them.
So time for me to admit this rabbit hole. So when Let's Play became a thing before Twitch ever existed, and I used to search online via YouTube and Google Video before Google ever bought YouTube. I used to watch for certain things with video games because I figured, you know what? If somebody's proficient enough to play them, then I know that's going to save me a bunch of time if something has an interesting story. So the whole Arkham series, I know, and they really do hit things pretty darn well. He is absolutely correct that they discuss Batman's psyche. A lot of the hidden things that are found and a lot of the Easter eggs with different Arkham interviews and evaluations of the inmates, those are amazing if you ever get the opportunity to listen to those, because they do sometimes sound like what could be our skits. Not that they come close to our excellence, but still, no, the overall feel and the amount of effort, those are fantastic video games in addition to great world building. Oh man, I definitely agree with that, and I'm surprised that I don't think of that stuff more often. But yeah, definitely, did a great job of just allowing people to get that temporary feel of being Batman.
The thing that I take away from the Batman Arkham games the most is the meme video where someone swapped the character skins for Batman and Catwoman during one particular scene. I forget which of the games it is, but it's Batman looking like Catwoman and vice versa. And the way that they animated Catwoman walking was very comedically sexual with the swinging hips and the this and that. And it's bad enough to see Catwoman looking like that. But when you see Batman walking like swishing and sashaying, and Catwoman is just walking very rigidly, the visual is just absolutely hilarious. So I'll put a link to it in the show notes because I know it's out there somewhere. But somebody swapped the character models for Batman and Catwoman, and it's just absolutely hilarious. Jeanine on Facebook during the live stream says, no one has mentioned Batman the Brave and the Bold yet. That's a favorite. I have seen a lot of clips of that show. I've seen a few episodes that came out when I was a little older. So I confess I didn't watch it. But what I know of the show is that it really embraces the history of the character and the idea that there is no real wrong interpretation of Batman, that every version from the bright night of Adam West to the dark and brooding animated adventures to the campy, weirdly sexualized, Joel Schumacher nipple suits, they're all valid. And I just thought that, and this is something that, again, we talked about with Dr. Langley and Ben last week, the appeal and enduring ability of a character for that long, and the ability and the fact that you can go as varied in the interpretations and still hit something and still be able to say, that's Batman, that's also Batman, that's also Batman, is just something that's really special. Next is Ray from the Into the Night podcast and also the Spider-Woman podcast.
Hello, Anthony and Doc Issues. This is Ray. I just thought I'd like to drop in some thoughts for your episode dedicated to Batman. Just give my thoughts for that. So all I'm going to say is Moon Knight rules.
Okay, you got it. All right, first troll.
I swear to God, I didn't know that was coming. Ray, you cheeky bastard. You Aussie asshole.
Oh, man.
I know. I love you, Ray. Thank you for that. That was,
yeah, it's always nice to have the underfunded Batman knockoff to make an appearance in the opposing universe, to let people know that if you do things in a half-assed way, you'll get fairly decent results and still have people fall for it.
Blow it out your ass, Doc.
Shots fired.
Nothing really more to say to that. Next is another present level patron, Ruby.
I always enjoyed watching those Batman movies. As a kid, I would watch those the George Clooney movies where just Poison Ivy and Mr. Freeze would just have their fun there. And then later on in the Dark Knight series, I just love seeing Two-Face there and just seeing his whole thing happening there. And then as a teen, I remember just staying up to like 3 a.m. to watch the animated series. And I would end up just staying as close to the TV as I could. So that way I could just listen to when someone would open the back door. Because I would be staying up until like 3 a.m. My mom, who would work the night shift, would come around that time. And so whenever I heard that click happening, I would just turn off the TV, just chuck the remote to the couch and bolt to my bed. And, hopefully my mom wouldn't hear me. And just from what I know, hopefully she didn't catch me, but, who knows? As for Batman, he was never really my thing. I always loved, seeing how he would interact with all the villains, because he never treat the exact character, the exact villain the same as like Joker versus Poison Ivy or Harley Quinn, all that. But I'm kind of looking forward to the Robert Pattinson movie. Maybe this is the one that will get me rooting for Batman.
So an interesting take from Ruby. First off, the first mention of the George Clooney film.
Yeah.
Which I did see in theaters. Doc, you may have been there with me.
Uh-huh.
I'll have to dig out the ticket stub.
Well, even if I wasn't, oh boy.
You disavow any and all knowledge. But Oh, I was just curious where Batman was on that it was 3:00 in the morning.
You got to think of syndication, dude. I mean, this is after the original animated series run. So first of all, shout out to any teenager or kid or whoever who did that sort of thing. This is where my privilege shows. So I was blessed at some point early in my life where I got my own bedroom and I had my own TV. So my parents' bedroom was upstairs. My bedroom moved downstairs. And therefore, when they went to sleep, like, that's carte blanche. Not that I took advantage of it. I made sure the volume was low and everything. But yeah, there are plenty of nights I was probably up way later than I should have been. I definitely appreciate her description of the fact that Batman handles each villain a different way. That's definitely true. But the thing that I'm going to expand on a little bit that she kind of said, but I think glossed over a little, the Two-Face situation. So you get Two-Face in the whole Dark Knight series, but you get Two-Face also in other Batman movies where it was much more meant to be visual. And that's where I really love the Harvey Dent that was created in the Dark Knight series. Just, I'm like, this is what I wanted in the first place. Because every other time I saw Two-Face, it clearly was meant to be this totally blown out caricature that I just could never enjoy. Just, I want a person that's gone through stuff and now is dealing with the physical aftermath, as opposed to, hey, I got one side that's human and the other side is whoa. Like, that's just my, honestly, that's the way that I think so many people interpret it, and I hated it. Maybe that's also why. Is that why I hate the discussion of dissociative identity disorder? Not really, but I just figured I'd throw it in again.
Well, it's been a while since you referenced how much you hate DID, so I suppose we were due. Surprised you didn't bring it up when Ray talked about Moon Knight.
That would imply I need to spend energy talking more about Moon Knight.
Again, blow it out your ass. So, the next one is Chris from the Geek Peak podcast.
Hey, what's up, Capes on the Couch? This is Chris from the Geek Peak podcast. So when we're talking about Batman, it's hard for me, of course, to not think about Heath Ledger and his portrayal of the Joker. Specifically, I always think of when I saw it in theaters the first week it came out at an IMAX theater. Some of my other friends had already watched it. We drove there, and right at the scene where Joker introduces himself to all the crime bosses and Falcone in the kitchen, he goes, "You want to see a magic trick? I'll make this pencil disappear." And right when he goes to do the badass head slam into the pencil, the freaking film cut. So I missed that the first time I ever watched the movie, which at the time, I think I was in high school. So that was like iconic. So that's one of my favorite memories. I guess not one of my favorites, but one thing that always stands out. Another thing is the voice that Tom Holland does. "When Gotham is in ashes, then you have my permission to die." Love that. Love that guy. Love his. I mean, he's the only one who could even remotely follow the Joker in that trilogy, in my opinion. And then last but not least, for comics and stuff, I really am a huge fan of that Harley Quinn TV show that is on HBO Max. It's an adult cartoon. Lots of cursing, lots of violence. It's awesome. And then one that I just watched recently is Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, and that's on HBO Max. Holy crap, that movie is badass, and it's 2 parts, but it's basically old Bruce Wayne coming back, donning the cowl again and going out and fighting, the new generation of crime, the new generation of bad guys. So I'm a huge fan of it. I would highly recommend checking those out. And I just love Batman, so I'm stoked to hear this episode.
Are you serious? We really are just going to cover every possible iteration like in such a short period of time? You sure you didn't set this up?
I swear to God, did not set this up. But Chris, I absolutely second your love for the Harley Quinn show. And I've spoken about that show previously on this podcast. I think that is one of the most brilliant and well-crafted and well-written shows on TV. Going back to Bane, I love how they just absolutely make Bane. They take the Tom Hardy voice from The Dark Knight Rises and they just absolutely play with it in such a fun way. I am this credit card's reckoning. The number of times I found myself quoting, "Goddamn millennials," just because of the joke. And I also, my personal favorite is King Shark. I think he's hilarious, and that Ron Funches does an absolutely amazing job. And I'm actually looking to create, Doc will get a kick out of this. I'm looking to create for my next D&D session a character that is basically going to be King Shark from the Harley Quinn series.
Oh,
like,
my goodness.
Half shark,
Yes.
half man,
Yes.
intelligent, but also incredibly strong. As I mentioned earlier, my wife is watching The Flash, and King Shark shows up from time to time. But every time he shows up, if I'm in the living room watching it with her, I will repeat his dialogue in the show as Ron Funches, and just like a fun, lighthearted, "Hey, what's going on, guys?"
Oh, wow. I'll admit I can't compete with any of what you're saying. Just to take a little bit of a riff, and I'm going to tie it back to ironically mentioning a Batman movie with Poison Ivy and Mr. Freeze. When you mentioned Heath Ledger's Joker, I love the idea that the entire Rogues Gallery and the Bat family and Batman himself, it gives actors such an opportunity to do things sometimes that you wouldn't even think that they're capable of. Like, don't get me wrong. I had the idea that Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example, had a sense of humor. And I know that for a long time in his career, he wanted to be a villain again. I'm not saying that the movie is good, and I'm not saying that he was great in it, but doggone it, I love the fact that he had so much fun. It comes across loud and clear. He's like, I don't care what you guys think. I'm enjoying the hell out of this. And of course, Heath Ledger, the unfortunate circumstances, all that. But man, I really wonder what it was like being around him during that time, because I don't think I would have wanted that. He definitely was a method actor. People knew that. And so I'd be pretty intimidated.
Oh, you're talking about Ledger for a second. I thought you were talking about Schwarzenegger.
Not Schwarzenegger.
Wait.
I switched over to Ledger. I'm sorry. I apologize. I went back and forth.
Schwarzenegger's not method.
This is my adult brain. I apologize.
Jeanine says, okay, who's going to mention the Lego Batman movie? That movie is amazing. I don't care what you think of me. That is absolutely one of my favorite film portrayals of Batman ever. He's just, it's beautiful. Will Arnett does an astounding job. Although my only minor beef with that film is the fact that they shoehorn in all of the other like Lego universes. And I know it had previously been established, in the Lego movie that you have all these other universes to play with. But I just liked I would have liked to see just a little more self-contained Gotham in that. Jeanine says it's the best DC movie. Let's be honest.
Ooh, that's hard to debate.
Yeah, it's I can't really hate on that. I can't.
Boy,
I don't know that I can definitively say you're right, but I know that I can't say you're wrong. And there is a distinction there. So next to last is Seth from Geekville Radio. Let's get his thoughts.
Hello, Anthony. Hello, Dr. Issues. Hello, Capes on the Couch listeners. This is Seth, a.k.a. Zandrax, the mayor of Geekville and the host of Geekville Radio, available at geekvilleradio.com and the podcatcher of your choosing. And with that cheap plug out of the way, I want to tell you what I think about with Batman. Batman is probably my third favorite superhero next to Captain America and Superman. And Batman has endured over the years, has had many different styles. His roots go back to the pulp characters like the Shadow and the Green Hornet all the way back in the 30s. And since then, he's evolved to everything from the clean-cut, hold it right there, villain, to, of course, the modern, I'm Batman. But through it all, there are two things that I think means the most to me about Batman. Number one, he willingly fights the never-ending fight to wipe out evil. I think deep down he knows he will never truly succeed at this. But he keeps going because he does not want another child or another person to go through what he did, losing parents and that be surrounded by darkness like that. And I think that's what keeps him going. He has that indomitable will to fight the never-ending fight. And number two, he is a human with no actual superpowers who is able to stand alongside true superpowered beings and be looked at as their equal. I think that's pretty amazing. And it also goes to show that you too can accomplish anything if you work hard, believe in yourself, and have billions of dollars at your disposal.
Well, that's some of the stuff that we talked about last week with Dr. Langley, the idea that Batman can exist in theory as opposed to some of these other superheroes. So I thought that Seth getting into some of the more psychoanalytical discussions about Batman more so than anybody else, which I appreciated.
Yep, way more than I can right now. So good on him.
And so last is Ariel. Ariel is the only one that I intentionally ordered. I put her last because she told me that her piece was about 4 minutes long because she could not find a way to shorten it. And I said, that's totally fine. Like, I'm not averse to that at all. But Ariel being Ariel, and side note, go check out her columns on our website, capesonthecouch.com. She's got the long box view. Amazing, amazing writer. And this is the only one that I did listen to because she said, try and see if you can cut it down to like 2 minutes or so. And I listened to it and I said, I'm not touching a second of this. And you're about to hear why.
Hello, Capes on the Couch. This is Ariel of Request Every Member of the Bat Family Infamy. As you may have realized from listening to any of the episodes based on my requests, I love Batman a lot. And obviously, I'm not alone here. His popularity speaks for itself. But when trying to approach the question of what Batman means to me, I found myself thinking about why it is that Batman resonates with anyone. One thing I see a lot is this idea that he's relatable. You're probably not going to find out that you're an alien or an Amazon princess anytime soon, but you could in theory be Batman. Now, realistically, no, you can't. But the point is taken, right? He shares our limitations, and for that reason, he is relatable. But I don't think that's the full story. Because if that's the case, then why has he become more formidable as his popularity grows and more popular as his formidability grows? Obviously, this isn't universal, and there are some people who really are mad about the prep time thing, but he wouldn't be the undisputed king of DC if that were as obnoxious to everyone as it is to some people. So what is it? And I can only speak for myself. So here's my thought, and bear with me because it's going to wind a little getting there. So Bruce has a number of gifts. He's intelligent, rich, handsome. He could have just flopped around Wayne Manor for the rest of his life, married a supermodel or socialite, and lived on his inheritance. He could have become a famous for being famous celebrity, partying and doing drugs and burning out by 30. The thing is, if he had, no one would blame him. They'd say, such a shame, but who could expect anything else? You know what happened to him as a kid. You know what he saw. You know what he lost. And that's the thing that people have to remember about Bruce, I think. The thing that makes him a hero just as glorious, just as inspirational as Superman or Wonder Woman is that, like them, he was born with the gifts he'd need to become as greedy, as self-indulgent as he wanted to be. And unlike them, he has all the pain and trauma and anger he'd need to go down that path. But he didn't. Instead, he took his PTSD, his depression, his anger, and his mortal body and mind, and built a human who can stand as equals with the most powerful people in the world. He manufactured his own ascension, while never actually shedding all that pain. And he did that while carrying all this scar tissue, both real and metaphorical, on his back. And all those wounds became weapons. Which makes Batman both relatable and inspirational in ways that most other heroes can't be. Because he was born with our defects and our limits, and he suffered like we do. And he could have broken, as we sometimes do. Sometimes he does break. But he gets back up every time, stronger and more determined, And this leaves us with the message that our limits aren't limits, they're challenges. And that grief may never really go away, but we can still push through and fight for another day. He tells us that our flaws are not absolute, and we, human though we are, can nonetheless be so much greater and stronger than we ever dreamed. It's not that Batman shares our limitations that makes him so special. It's that he's scarred up and angry and lonely and in pain, but he's better than we are anyway. So maybe, even if our scars don't fade, and we're yelling at the TV and we're alone and still mourning something, we can be better than we are right now, too.
And that's why she has a column on our website.
And that's why she should replace me on this podcast. Holy cow. That was everything that I would hope someone who is into the comic genre, who has favorite characters, who simply enjoys the idea that fiction can be the best reflection and exposure of ourselves. Wow, that's the type of thing that I would love to remind myself of whenever I have a weekend like I had this weekend. I'm going to be blunt. And when she was describing that, I actually was pulling it up because it's one of my favorite images ever, and it's by Alex Ross. It's I don't know if you know this. It's the picture. It's literally Batman scars, and it's him clearly with the cape and cowl off, and you just see his back, and you just see him, just kind of looking at himself, and it's like you could tell he's been through so much, and yet in that picture, to me, it's not exhaustion. It's the idea that he knows that this is what he signed up for, and he is always going to put it back on again. My goodness, Ariel. I just have to say, if you ever decide that you just want to be a great voice of the voiceless, I know your writing is amazing because I have read it on the website, but the way that you say those things is just as powerful, if not more so.
Her eloquence just is astonishing and just astounding and beautiful in ways that make me realize that for all of my intelligence and so-called eloquence, I flounder compared to her. When I read her stuff, when I read her analyses and listening to that 4-minute clip, I think I don't know that I have ever in 38 years said something so eloquently and beautifully as that. And she's talking about Batman. Like, I haven't said anything like that in my years of politics, law, podcasting, relationships, parenthood, life. I don't think I've spoken about anything with the clear love and appreciation that she was able to say in 4 minutes about Batman. I have a communications degree. I worked in radio. I can't talk that good. It's amazing. And that's why I wanted to end with it. Because I knew nothing was going to be able to follow that. I don't want to follow that. And this is my damn show.
Oh, wow. I think that's the type of thing, though, that, not to get too heady, too late, that we all need sometimes just to remember that. And that's what these characters can do for us. That's what Batman really can do for so many people. And I'm sure he has. Sometimes we make light of it, but when you get down to it, we all just want that one person that's always going to be there for us. And I don't care if it's someone that's drawn or animated or acted out, because if someone's able to think of it and if someone's able to even pantomime it for a small amount, then that means that we're all capable of it, as she said. This is a great third birthday present.
Indeed it is. Happy third birthday to us. So those are all the clips. Thank you to everybody who sent them in. We appreciate it. This is, like I said, a fun one, if a bit easier lift than some of our normal episodes. So no recommended reading this week, although we are going to have another link to the Batman in Psychology by Dr. Langley. Go out and pick it up. Next episodes, Batman's the film commentary for the 1989 Batman movie. We'll have that synced up. It'll be fun. It'll be educational. We'll try and throw in some knowledge there, but also just sort of our general thoughts, because I have not seen this movie in 30 years. I probably haven't watched it since I was about 7-8 years old. So it's going to be very interesting to see what these takes are going to sound like after so long away. And then the last episode of our Bat March is going to be a 1-hour Batman in therapy session. That is going to be a beast to write and to act out. But we wanted to end the month on a bang. And I don't think there's any bigger bang than that in terms of the character. So get ready. I'm going to have to start drinking tea with honey now and sucking on lozenges. And then we come out of March with a complete 180 in terms of mood. And Jeanine has selected Elastigirl, Mrs. Incredible. So we had a couple different characters to look at to follow Bat March. And I said, I'm going to go with that one because we're going to need something that's a palate cleanser. And I think that episode is going to be just so much fun to do. As always, you can find all of our episodes on our website, capesonthecouch.com. You can find Ariel's amazing column, The Long Box View, on there as well. And we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Capes on the Couch. We have a Patreon. You can subscribe and unlock additional content. Patreon.com/Capes on the Couch. And our merch is available. If you go to capesonthecouch.com/merch, that will bring you to our TeePublic site. And you can get some cool stuff with our logo on it. Doc, anything you want to chime in with?
Just thank you to everyone that submitted. And I'm just humbled by how much you actually listen to us to even be willing to send this stuff. Except for Ray. Screw that guy.
So
I'm kidding. Ray, you're awesome. It's all good.
Yeah, it's all good, man. So for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.